the criminal prosecution.
I can see that too. It seems like they want to shut it down. If this would have gone the other direction, that could have thrown a lot of things out of whack. If for the not for people like freedom and the idea behind sound money, but for the Federal Reserve and whatnot. So they had to crush this down. Because I was looking through a lot of these articles here, and the judge informed the jury that they could not decide. And I don't know what's going on, but I was reading and they said the judge was saying Enza, I believe his name was, that they had to value that the jury had to consider the value of the coins at their market value, not even consider the fact of what was going on there. Now, in the law too, this is something else that was strange to me about tax law. Basically, you can be acquitted if you think you're doing the right thing, but if you think you're doing the wrong thing, so it's intent, you can get you're criminally negligent. That seems the whole system seems kind of shady to me, in my opinion. Do you? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, the Supreme Court has held that if somebody has a good faith belief that they don't really owe these taxes, that a certain law is unconstitutional, that they're really acting in good faith and not simply trying to come up with a fake excuse to defraud the government, that the jury can acquit the person if the jury is convinced of that or has a reasonable doubt about that. And that's essentially the case that Kerry went with to the jury. He wasn't arguing that what he did was legal. He was arguing that what he did, he believed was legal. He had a good faith belief, and that's why I find it astounding that this jury would not acquit him. Now, of course, I wasn't there and I wasn't watching the proceedings, but if anybody honestly believes that what he was doing was legal, it seems to me it's this guy. I mean, he's devoted like 20 years of his life to making this case. And I noticed the same thing, that the judge instructed the jury that legally these employees had to report the coins at market value. Well, if that's the case, Chris, and that very well may be the case, then it's a sham and it's a fraud that these coins are legal tender, because they're either legal tender at their face value or they're not. And if you have to report them at market value, then they're not legal tender. And the government's got no business telling people that they're legal tender.
Here's something that just popped in my mind. Back in a couple years, like when copper prices were high, and they were saying that some of the pennies, the copper and the pennies were worth more than a penny. With that kind of reasoning that the IRS was using, when people paying change back in pennies, weren't they breaking the law too?
Well, yeah, that's an interesting question. And the point you're making, it really exposes what's going on. And what Kerry's been doing is he's really exposing what the Federal Reserve's been doing. And it's no different from what Ron Paul's been saying, what we've been saying for 20 years, what libertarians have been saying, the Austrian economists, that the Fed has been slowly but surely, over the time of its existence in 1913, has been destroying our money. Because at one time, a $20 gold coin actually traded for a $20 in paper money. I mean, the gold coin was the money, and the paper money was the evidence of indebtedness, of owing that $20 gold coin. Now, how many paper dollars does it take to buy that same 1 ounce $20 gold coin? It takes 1,000 paper dollars. Well, why is that? It's because the Fed has been printing money year after year, decade after decade, to finance the ever-growing expenditures of the federal government. They've debased our currency. They've plundered and looted people. It's an indirect form of tax. And that's why they're really angry at this guy, because he's exposing that by virtue of what he's doing. He's making them say these coins have to be declared at market value because of what you say. The system obviously would start to break down real fast if everybody started to do this. But what they really should have done was they should have just made it an express law. These are not legal tender, these coins. You've got to declare them at market value. And that's not what they did. They keep the charade of saying these coins are market value, or these coins are legal tender. Well, they're not legal tender. Not for taxes, or not.
So I wonder if that's going to come up at all. And can see what happens next. I was even looking back here through the articles. They were saying that these coins that they're using are all past 1985. It must be when they started reprinting these up. And so if they pass the law and Congress is up there, they should be following it. But I guess I guess that maybe goes to the argument that some people say, like Kerry and Wayne Paul were arguing that they weren't paying the treasury because it's not quite. They serve a foreign purpose, working with the World Bank and whatnot. If I understand that correctly, and where am I going on this? Oh yeah, the article. Ron Paul was part of the helping or voted for the legislation in 1985 that created these coins that they're using with the that are stamped with the U.S. Treasury.
Well, it was just up to there that it was illegal for Americans to own gold. I mean, this is what's so incredible about the history of this thing, that we start out as a country in which people are using gold and silver coins as their money. So there's no such thing as paper dollars, Federal Reserve notes, $20 bills, and so forth that's being used as money. People were accustomed to using gold and silver coins. And why was this? It was because the framers of the Constitution were convinced that if federal officials could use paper money, they would plunder and loot people. They would debase the currency the way they've been doing now. And so over time, federal officials were able to get rid of that gold and silver coin standard and copper coins and nickel coins. They were able to get rid of it. And so that opened up the floodgates to unrestrained government spending. And of course, the culmination came into the Franklin Roosevelt regime, where they actually nationalized gold. I mean, they made it illegal for Americans to own gold coins, when this was just everyday standard practice for more than a century. Now they're turning everybody into felons for just owning gold coins. Everybody was required to turn their gold coins into the government. Many people, of course, didn't. They hoarded them. So Americans were prohibited from owning gold, unlike people around the rest of the world, for decades, until the 1980s, when people started, libertarians mostly, started saying, well, what's the point of all this? Why can't Americans who profess to be a free people own gold and silver coins? And that was when it was re-legalized, and the mint started reissuing gold coins, but still playing by the old charade of issuing the coins that had been used in the denominations pre-1933 was when that law was passed. And they continue this charade, and Kerry comes along and exposes the charade.
Well, and he hasn't been speaking about anything. I haven't read anything else out there. So his rest of his life could be ruined. He's facing up to 296 years in November that he's going to be sentenced, or up to that amount. And is anybody else going to stand up for this right now? Who knows? It's going to be the next step, I guess. And the next step we can even talk about is the big movement that's going across the country now is the Audit the Fed bill that was introduced by Ron Paul in the House. Has over 75% now, and over 25% in the Senate. Do you think that this Audit the Federal Reserve bill